Donald Trump might have expected resistance from rivals, but it's the smaller allies quietly slipping away that are catching him off guard. And now, 10 countries are openly pulling back from the US, with some turning their backs entirely. This isn't just about diplomacy. It's about trade deals canceled, alliances collapsing, and trust evaporating. From global powers to overlooked nations, America is facing a wave of rejection, and Trump is at the center of the storm. Let's dive into the list, starting with one you probably didn't expect. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more engaging content. Number 10. Lesotho. It might be small in size, but Lesotho just made a massive geopolitical statement. In early 2025, Lesotho became one of the first African nations to publicly denounce the Trump administration's rhetoric on land rights and sovereignty. After Trump amplified misinformation about expropriation policies across Africa, Lesotho's government responded by freezing diplomatic discussions and pulling back from several joint U.S. development projects. Why does this matter? Because Lesotho was once a poster child of U.S.-funded aid success. This isn't just about aid withdrawal. It's a full-blown rejection of U.S. influence. Trump underestimated how his words on Africa would echo through smaller nations that no longer want to be pawns in American narratives. Tourism from Lesotho to the U.S. has dipped. Cultural exchange programs were suspended, and there are whispers that Lesotho may pivot more toward China's Belt and Road infrastructure projects. If even the smallest players are walking away, what does that say about America's standing globally? And this is just the beginning. Did you ever expect a tiny country like Lesotho to stand up to the U.S.? Drop your reaction below. Number 9. South Sudan. South Sudan has had a complicated relationship with the United States for years, but Trump just made things worse. In a move that blindsided even seasoned diplomats, the Trump administration revoked all South Sudanese visas. Yes, all of them. Families were torn apart, students stranded, and professionals suddenly out of status. For a country struggling with conflict and rebuilding, this wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a total shutdown. The backlash was immediate. South Sudan's government called the move hostile and demanded answers. Activists across Africa pointed to this as yet another example of how U.S. foreign policy under Trump has become increasingly unpredictable and punishing. And it didn't stop there. Aid programs have quietly started vanishing, and partnerships in agriculture and health are dissolving overnight. America's hardline approach has cost it one of its more hopeful African relationships. South Sudanese leaders have started looking elsewhere, towards China and the Gulf, for investment, security, and diplomatic support. And with U.S. goodwill evaporating, those relationships are only growing stronger. Trump may think tough talk scores points at home, but in South Sudan, it's triggering realignment. And with every visa revoked, the U.S. loses not just people, but influence, trust, and a future foothold in a strategically vital region. Is this about independence or something deeper? What's your take on South Sudan's move? Number 8. China. While Trump wages economic battles at home, China is playing chess on the global stage, and it's winning. The Chinese government has capitalized on every misstep from the Trump administration to present itself as the more reliable global partner. And let's be honest, it's working. While Trump ramps up tariffs and diplomatic snubs, China is signing deals, brokering peace, and offering countries what the U.S. no longer can: predictability and partnership. Even former U.S. allies are now leaning toward Beijing. Trade between China and developing nations has surged, while many of those same countries have cooled relations with the U.S.-China's Belt and Road Initiative, once seen as a risky bet, now looks like a lifeline for dozens of economies. And Trump's America First rhetoric? It's pushing nations directly into China's orbit. China's state media doesn't even have to work hard anymore. The U.S. is doing its propaganda for them. Countries are questioning whether Washington can be trusted at all. And Beijing? It's smiling from the sidelines, rolling out the red carpet for America's former friends. The irony? Trump claims to be tough on China, but his policies are strengthening its hand across the globe. In the power struggle for global dominance, China is seizing opportunities Trump doesn't even see coming. Is China just flexing, or are we witnessing a full-blown economic power shift? Comment below. Number 7. European Union. For decades, the European Union stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States. But in 2025, that relationship is straining under the weight of Donald Trump's harsh rhetoric and policy threats. His recent declaration that Europe must get its act together on immigration before any future trade agreements sent shockwaves through Brussels. The message? America will withhold economic cooperation unless the EU tightens its borders, a demand many European leaders see as overreach. The backlash has been swift. Germany, France, and the Netherlands all condemned Trump's ultimatum, calling it a breach of trust between longtime allies. The European Parliament even delayed a major vote on US-EU trade cooperation in protest. As diplomatic ties cool, European businesses are quietly pivoting eastward, exploring partnerships with China and India instead. On the ground, the mood has shifted. Polls across Europe show a steady drop in public support for the US alliance. In Spain and Italy, anti-American protests have surged, fueled by Trump's inflammatory language. The optics of an unpredictable US administration are pushing European nations to consider more independent foreign policies, a major shift from just a few years ago. Even NATO, once untouchable, is feeling the strain. Trump's persistent attacks on defense spending have sparked internal debate over Europe's role in the alliance. As America pulls back, Europe may soon fill the void, on its own terms. What was once a symbol of transatlantic unity is now clouded by suspicion, defiance, and an urgent reevaluation of priorities. The message from Europe? If Trump wants to play hardball, they're ready. Before we move on, hit the like button to boost this video in the algorithm and support our work. Number 6. Colombia. Colombia's government has had enough. After months of what it calls humiliating deportation flights ordered by the Trump administration, tensions have reached a boiling point. In early 2025, Colombia suspended all bilateral migration talks with the U.S., citing disrespectful treatment of its citizens. The images of families being shackled and flown back in crowded planes sparked outrage across the country. This isn't just a diplomatic spat, it's personal. Many Colombians have relatives living in the U.S., and the emotional toll of these deportations is breaking families apart. President Petro took to national television, condemning Trump's tactics as cruel and counterproductive, adding that Colombia will no longer be America's silent partner in immigration enforcement. Economic consequences followed swiftly. Colombian lawmakers are now reconsidering long-standing trade deals with the U.S. Coffee exports have slowed, and new tariffs on American agricultural goods are under discussion. Meanwhile, China has stepped in, offering investment packages that could replace lost American trade. What's more, Colombia is signaling a broader realignment in its foreign policy. It has announced joint military exercises with Brazil and Argentina, a clear sign it's looking inward toward Latin America rather than north to Washington. Trump may have intended to project strength, but in Colombia, he's triggered a diplomatic firestorm that shows no signs of dying down. The U.S. isn't just losing influence, it's actively being replaced. Is Colombia making the right call or risking everything? Let's talk in the comments. Before we dive into number 5, quick heads up. If you're hooked on stories like this, you'll love what I share on YouTube Peaks. From behind-the-scenes research to early topic drops, it's where the real deep dives happen. Links below. Come join the Inside Circle. Number 5. South Korea. For decades, South Korea was one of America's most dependable allies in Asia. But in 2025, that bond is under severe strain. Donald Trump's recent tariff threats and demands for more military spending have rubbed many South Koreans the wrong way. And it's starting to show. South Korean media outlets are now openly questioning the value of the alliance. A recent poll by Hankook Research found that nearly 52% of South Koreans now view the U.S. more as a burden than a partner. And when Trump floated the idea of pulling U.S. troops out of the Korean peninsula unless Seoul pays more, public sentiment took a nosedive. At the heart of the issue is not just money, but dignity. Many South Koreans feel Trump is treating their country like a client state, not a sovereign partner. The backlash has grown fierce, especially among younger voters who are increasingly looking toward regional cooperation with Southeast Asia and even China. Economically, the tariff threats have already chilled trade talks. Samsung and Hyundai executives have hinted at shifting investment away from U.S. markets, and tourism from South Korea to America has dipped by 29% year over year. The U.S.-South Korea relationship was once a model of modern alliance building, but in 2025 it's unraveling fast, not because of a single disagreement, but a growing feeling that America under Trump simply can't be trusted. Is this a betrayal or a strategic pivot? Should the U.S. be worried? Number 4. Japan. If there's one country that's had enough of Trump's demands, it's Japan. In June 2025, Tokyo shocked Washington by canceling a high-level defense summit after the U.S. pushed for even more Japanese defense spending. The message was loud and clear. Respect is a two-way street. Trump's tone hasn't helped. His public criticisms of Japan's pacifist constitution and its free riding on U.S. security guarantees struck a nerve with the Japanese public. Approval ratings for the U.S. among Japanese citizens have plummeted, with NHK reporting the lowest favorability rating in 2 decades. Economically, Japan is pushing back hard. Trade talks have stalled, and Japan has started negotiating new deals with the EU and ASEAN to reduce dependence on U.S. markets. Major Japanese firms like Sony and Toyota are reassessing their U.S. operations. Japan's pivot is strategic, not emotional. After years of balancing diplomacy, Tokyo seems ready to take a bolder stance. Even Japan's foreign minister remarked that allies shouldn't be treated like underlings to be ordered around. America's strongest Pacific ally is now stepping back. Not out of hostility, but out of sheer fatigue with being pushed around. And if Japan is moving on, it raises serious questions about who's really isolating whom. After decades of partnership, is Japan finally saying enough? What's your opinion? Number 3, India. India was once considered a vital pillar in America's Indo-Pacific strategy. But now, in 2025, the relationship is showing serious cracks. After years of quietly accepting Washington's double standards, New Delhi is finally pushing back, and hard. The catalyst? Ongoing U.S. pressure for India to sever ties with Russia, even as America continues to engage in indirect trade with Moscow itself. Indian leaders, fed up with what they call selective morality, are making their discontent loud and clear. The Economic Times didn't hold back, publishing a blistering editorial accusing the United States of playing a duplicitous game. Indian officials have echoed that tone, asking, why should India compromise its national interests while the U.S. conveniently bends its own rules? This mounting frustration is igniting a broader national movement, one that prioritizes sovereignty and independence over appeasing Washington. Trade relations are now teetering. U.S. tech giants like Apple and Google are facing increased regulatory pressure in India. Meanwhile, India is strengthening its defense partnerships with France and Russia, bypassing American arms deals entirely. This marks a clear pivot, one that's being applauded by many in India who see it as reclaiming dignity on the world stage. But the shift isn't just diplomatic, it's emotional. More Indians than ever feel disillusioned by what they perceive as Washington's patronizing attitude. Social media campaigns calling for a new non-alignment are gaining momentum, and trust in American leadership is fading fast. India's global confidence is surging, and its leaders are making it known that they won't be strong-armed. The days of unquestioning partnership are over. In their place is a cooler, transactional approach where India calls more of the shots. And Washington? It's learning that the world's largest democracy won't be bullied. Number 2, Canada. Once America's closest ally and neighbor, Canada is now pulling away, and fast. The year 2025 has brought a chilling change in tone between Ottawa and Washington. What was once a seamless friendship is now riddled with tension, tariffs, and boycott campaigns. From major cities like Toronto and Vancouver to remote towns near the border, Canadians are making it clear they're tired of being pushed around. It started with Trump's aggressive tariffs on Canadian goods and his dismissive rhetoric about Canada's role in global diplomacy. But it didn't end there. Canadian supermarkets are now pulling U.S. products from shelves. Tourism to the U.S. has nosedived nearly 40%, and the once reliable flow of Canadian snowbirds seeking sun in Florida and Arizona has dropped to a trickle. Public sentiment is shifting dramatically. A recent national survey showed one of the sharpest declines in Canadian trust toward the United States in decades. And this isn't just political. Cultural, social, and economic ties are fraying. In fact, CTV News recently reported that many Canadians expect these boycotts to continue, even if Trump leaves office. The fallout is hitting hard in America. U.S. border towns that relied on Canadian shoppers and vacationers are watching their economies crumble. Local businesses are shuttering. Hotels, restaurants, and gas stations that once thrived on cross-border traffic are reporting record-low revenues. The damage is no longer hypothetical. It's already here. This isn't just a diplomatic dispute. It's a foundational rupture in one of the world's most stable alliances. And worst of all, most Americans remain completely unaware of just how far Canada has pulled away, or how much it could cost them in the long run. Number 1. South Africa. South Africa has never been one to shy away from a global confrontation, but in 2025 it delivered a diplomatic punch that sent shockwaves straight to Washington. After Donald Trump leveled accusations about South Africa violating property rights with its controversial Expropriation Act, Pretoria responded with unwavering defiance. Officials dismissed Trump's claims as outright misinformation, calling it an affront to their democratic processes and national integrity. The backlash wasn't subtle, it was fierce, unapologetic, and deeply rooted in a long-standing frustration with U.S. rhetoric. But this conflict quickly escalated beyond political sparring. South Africa didn't just issue statements, it took action. It suspended multiple joint economic discussions, signaled its withdrawal from pending trade agreements, and began reevaluating its broader diplomatic posture toward Washington. Trump's inflammatory language surrounding land reform and national sovereignty reopened wounds of colonial legacy, and Pretoria decided it would no longer tolerate being talked down to by a Western power. Within weeks, South African trade delegations were recalled. U.S.-South Africa security cooperation programs were paused or scrapped altogether. What followed was a significant pivot. South African leaders initiated new dialogues with BRICS partners, China, India, Brazil, and Russia, to explore alternatives to American economic influence. It marked more than a policy tweak. It was a clear, symbolic break from the post-apartheid alignment with the West. As expected, Trump doubled down. His speeches grew more aggressive, accusing South Africa of destabilizing regional security. But the more he lashed out, the more unified South Africa became in standing its ground. In Cape Town and Johannesburg, protests erupted not against their own leaders, but against what citizens viewed as foreign interference. National pride surged, and the public narrative shifted decisively. South Africa was charting a new, independent path. In Pretoria's eyes, the era of quiet diplomacy had ended. The gloves were off, and South Africa was no longer afraid to challenge the U.S. head-on. This wasn't just a fracture, it was a reset, a turning point that could ripple across the entire African continent. This isn't just a rundown of angry headlines, it's a geopolitical warning flare. From Lesotho to South Korea, from India to the European Union, nations once tightly woven into Washington's fabric are now pulling at the threads. These aren't fringe actors, they're major players, longtime allies, strategic partners, and global influencers who are now rethinking their relationship with the United States. They're not turning against America for the sake of rebellion. They're responding to years of heavy-handed diplomacy, economic coercion, and what they perceive as U.S. hypocrisy. Whether it's sanctions for some and exemptions for others, or trade demands cloaked in nationalism, the message is clear. Washington's approach is driving countries away. Donald Trump's vision of American strength was built on dominance, but dominance without trust is a shaky foundation. And in 2025, that foundation is showing deep cracks. When leaders cancel meetings, when joint ventures dissolve, when multilateral institutions are questioned, these aren't isolated incidents. They're a pattern. The real danger? That this pattern becomes permanent. A world where the U.S. isn't the default leader, but just one of many voices in a crowded room. Where deals are made without American input. Where defense pacts are replaced by new coalitions that don't rely on Washington. So we want to hear from you. Can the U.S. rebuild these broken bridges? Or are we witnessing the rise of a truly multipolar world where America no longer holds the center? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more hard-hitting global insights. And stay tuned for our next deep dive into the shifting tides of power, only on Globe Discoveries.